put the food back and I spent time with family. Whereas before I was literally like, I would sit there at the dinner table and I would watch and I'd be like, okay, has everyone finished a plate? Has everyone got seconds? Okay, I'm going to go now, because I don't want to be that guy. Like, I'm very mindful of the fact that like, all I want to do is eat and all I want to do is keep eating. But there's all these other people around and like, you feel weird and like, oh, what are they going to think about me if I go back and get more food and someone else didn't? So I'm, have all these thoughts going in my head the whole time. And it never really allowed me to experience just the time hanging out with family because my mind was so preoccupied by food and that was it.
Trevor Fulbright, welcome to the American Glutton Podcast.
Man, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Dude, I've been a big fan of your transformation for a number of years now, and I'd love to just get into that with you. Were you an overweight kid?
Oh, yeah. I was always overweight growing up. I remember I was about 9 years old or so. The first time I remember being over 200 pounds. And, it would be, I would lose some weight, regain some weight. I would diet since I was 7 or 8 years old sort of thing.
So it's just something that was your parents putting you on diets?
Yeah.
And was this something you were a participant in or you had buy-in to or you wanted?
I as much buy-in as I guess I can as a kid, I understood that I was fat. I didn't like it.
Right.
I didn't quite always know what to do. So it was, as a kid, you kind of listen to your parents like, oh, this seems like a good idea. My parents say I should.
Yeah. Yeah. That was basically my experience too.
Yeah.
When, as an adult, was the first time that you were like, I need to change this?
Man, I was probably 18 or so when I remember I got on the scale. I hadn't been on the scale in a few years and it read 332 pounds. And I remember I cried because like I couldn't imagine I let myself get to this point. I was ashamed of it. At the same time, I didn't do anything about it at the time. But I think that was the first like realization of like, this is like kind of getting out of control.
Yeah. Yeah. 332 pounds at 18. How old are you?
I'm 33 now.
33. So, I mean, that was a while ago, but I think that, you weren't like at risk of blowing out a scale. Like at that point in time, scales went up to 350 generally, right? A home scale and stuff like that. But that is a big number to confront. So when did you finally decide to change it? I mean, I understand that, like seeing that number and going like, oh wow, this is getting out of control. Yeah. What was the impetus for change?
Well, so it's kind of a funny story in retrospect, but a girl I had been dating for a while and had thought about even proposing to, we had a really nasty breakup. And in the middle of all of that going on, I had also seen some doctors, found out I was pre-diabetic. I had high blood pressure. And so at a time, my friend was like, hey, man, we got to get your mind off of everything going on. I'm going to start working out with you. We'll work out a couple times a week. We'll go on some walks just to kind of keep your mind off of, the breakup and everything. And that's kind of how it started for me. At the time it was actually at Thanksgiving when the breakup happened. And so it was a New Year's resolution to lose weight. And at that time I had, continued to climb up to a little over 350 pounds. And so just as a way to kind of like that, get my mind off of everything going on, I just started working out with my friend.
Yeah, that's awesome. What diet did you do?
At the time, I always kind of say this a little jokingly, but the diet was like, don't eat like an asshole. Because for me, the common thing is like I would eat like 2 frozen pizzas for dinner most nights of the week. And, that's not good.
Right.
Like I think most people have a basic understanding of what like healthy eating is. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to try to make smarter choices. Not eat frozen pizza for dinner every single night of the week. And that's just how it started. Over time, I fell back into previous habits. One of the frequent diets I was put on as a kid was low carb. So eventually I kind of adjusted to that. But in that initial spurt, it was like, I'm just not going to eat like an asshole.
Right. I'm not going to eat like an asshole. And I think there is some truth to that. Like, right. I mean, nobody, I don't think, imagines, other than like some, science guy trainer trying to make a point about the relativism of health, but nobody goes into McDonald's going like, this is a healthy meal.
Right. Yeah,
right?
exactly. It's like you don't look at a bacon double cheeseburger and a salad and be like, I bet that double cheeseburger is a really healthy choice.
Right. Right. And I think you and I agree that, like, as far as a one-off meal goes, it's neither really healthy nor unhealthy.
Yeah.
If all things taken into consideration. But like, yes, if that is the primary, like you're saying, like I ate a couple pizzas almost every night. That is an unhealthy diet by pretty
sure.
much any metric.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that. Don't eat like an asshole. How far did that get you?
Man, it really got me pretty far. I think I lost about 60, 70 pounds before I started like thinking a bit more deeply about diet and what I ate.
And was it don't eat like an asshole in conjunction with low carb?
At the time, no. At the time, it was just like, just don't eat like an asshole. I still, I would still eat, bread frequently. Like, I went from, chicken nuggets for lunch to like a turkey sandwich.
Right.
Right. So something like that. So I still ate carbs fairly frequently, but I think it was like, I was probably about 60 or so pounds down when I started, like, I kind of had buy-in at that point.
Yeah.
Starting all this, it was never, losing a bunch of weight was never exactly the goal. The goal was like something to put my energy into, just to get away from everything else going on in my life at the time.
And so you really started by working out with your buddy.
Yeah.
Was that the thing that got you interested in, like, oh, I'm doing this, I could also lose weight by affecting my diet?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it started building up a little bit of momentum.
Yeah.
Where it's like I was doing something. It's like once that first step was started, it's like maybe I can do something else too.
Yeah. And when you're 60 pounds down and you're on the don't eat like an asshole diet, what is the thing that makes you shift?
It was funny. So my friend he was very adamant, like, hey, let's take before and after pictures for all this. So we had taken some before pictures when we first started, and I never looked at them. I just did not want to see that. I didn't want to see what I looked like. I didn't want to see myself. I avoided looking at myself in mirrors and stuff at the time. So, 60 pounds down and like just my everyday life, seeing myself in the mirror, I actually didn't notice any changes.
Yeah.
I think it's just you see yourself every day. So these changes that happen over time, they just kind of pass you by. And so, here a few months in, 60 pounds down, I was like actually ready to give up and just go back to where I was before. Because in my mind, looking at myself, I'm like, I'm still fat. I'm still a fat guy.
Right.
And before I did that, my friend was like, hey, let's look at these pictures. And so I actually like looked at the pictures side by side and visually could see like big changes. And I was like, oh, like things are happening. I can do this.
Yeah.
Like I can lose weight, for the first time successfully really in my life. I think I can manage this.
And the don't eat like an asshole diet, which, by the way, you could write a book about that. You know
right.
what I mean? Because it really isn't like the way I'm picturing it and imagining it, to go from anybody who is on like the standard American diet, who goes into that way of eating, you don't have to deprive yourself. You don't have to be hungry.
Yeah.
You know, and you're just making these little shifts, and it's like it's not really hard. I mean, yes, you're not eating pizza every night,
Right.
and you might miss some of that. You might have to like go do some emotional work on yourself if you're lacking that joy or that release or the dopamine
Yeah.
or whatever you're getting from it. But like you can get pretty far just doing that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a big thing. I talk about it, even now when I talk to people, it's like, hey, if you're just starting, you don't have to make a complete shift in everything in your life. And I think that's a problem a lot of people run into is they feel like they have to, completely change everything all at once from the get-go and go from one extreme to the other.
Yeah, this is something that I learned about sobriety, but I didn't apply it to weight loss for many, many years. But like I was in rehab a number of times for substances and non-food substances. And the first thing I was like, okay, no coffee, no cigarettes. I'm going to start a diet. I'm going to get clean. And they're like, no. You're not here for any of that. We're just not going to do drugs while you're here and drink alcohol. And that's all we're working on. And that was a big failing I had for many years was like, okay, if I want to lose weight, I'm going to have to do cardio for 8 hours a day and starve myself or do this insanely low calorie diet, time and again. And it was impossible for me. I would love to hear, I think any of these things, like if there was a magic bullet, the whole thing would be solved and we wouldn't have to have these conversations because it would just be like, well, it's keto. Everybody who does keto is successful and keeps the weight off. Unfortunately, that's not the case, but I have noticed very rarely is it a linear thing. Is it like I just did this one thing and never looked back and my life was miraculously different?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, I agree. It's, it becomes kind of an evolution over time. And I think a lot of people, it gets glamorized. I think losing weight, like someone who's successfully done it, but like, there's a lot of ups and downs for everybody in the process.
Yeah.
And that requires a lot of evolution and learning.
Did you regain weight at any point?
Oh yeah. So I remember probably one of the more extreme instances is, as I had kept losing weight, I got down to about 210 pounds. And it was, you get to that idea of the last 10 pounds sort of thing. So that's when I really started the crazy stuff. And I was like eating as little as possible. I remember I was probably eating about an average of 1,500 calories a day. Ooh. On top of that, I was probably working out 5 to 6 hours a day.
Right.
And I did that for a couple months and I just crashed and burned.
Yeah.
The wheels fell off of it all. And I ended up gaining back probably to about 250 pounds before I finally was kind of able to like reel things back in.
All right. Well, here's a question that I want to ask you. And I've followed you for maybe 5 years on Instagram, and I pay attention to dudes like you because I'm impressed by you. And listen, I don't know that Instagram is always a perfect mirror to real life. Right. I know we share the aspects we want to share. My observation of you is you are very lean. I've seen you with your shirt off through the years and you always look very lean to me. And now, like, for me, staying that lean is a fucking battle. Like, I've gotten as lean as you a number of times, a handful of times, really, not even a number of times. But like to get that lean, and at the end of the day, I just go like, okay, this is not where I can hang out. I just can't, And so, like, really, if I'm being honest, closer to 15% is really where I am like comfortable long term. And my body just kind of chills out and isn't fighting me as much as like if I'm trying to dig deep. how do you do that? Like, did you just find the right way? And you could tell me, go fuck yourself. I'm not as lean as you think. I don't know. And it could be genetics. Who knows?
Man, so this has been a battle over the years. So like in full transparency on all this, many a times there was, I would get lean and blow back up. But the first time I got like really, really lean, I maintained it for about a month, and then Thanksgiving happened.
Yeah.
And the wheels fell off.
Yeah.
And it was a 6-month spiral. And so, that would happen where I would get down pretty lean, come back up. And I got to a point where I was, maintaining probably around that 15% body fat. But, and this is something I've openly talked about quite a bit is, in 2021, I started taking semaglutide, a GLP-1 medication.
Wow, in 2021.
Yeah, because I had the kind of hunger that I had to get to 350 pounds never went away.
Yeah.
And it was a daily struggle, and I always made jokes about it, like, oh yeah, I'm always hungry, I could always eat, but it really was a thing. I would go weeks and months never actually feeling full.
Yeah.
And it would, I'm lucky that I do have a very strong support system, and my now wife and my close family and close friends. So they would understand, but I wouldn't do things like go out to eat.
Right.
Because I go to a restaurant and I would start eating, and it would be really hard to manage to keep control. That hunger just never left. It was something I always struggled with. And it did affect everyday life. That time I mentioned when I first got really lean and kind of ended up in a spiral, I actually remember sitting in my car crying once, because I was just thinking about, like, I have these friends that can, we can order pizza and they eat a few slices of pizza and are just like, ah, man, I'm full. That was good.
Yeah.
And I couldn't imagine that.
Yeah, no, I will not stop thinking about it. And then even if I do something like even if I take the leftover pizza and like take it out of the box and throw it in the trash can, I'll still be thinking about, like, can I resuscitate that pizza, or should I just go get another pizza? Like, I'm with you, dude. I have to be very careful, because I will have something like pizza once or twice a year, and I just have to go into it with a lot of forethought, with a lot of like, here's what's going to happen. I realize what's going to happen. It's going to be hard for me I'm going to think about it for 3 days, how good that pizza was. And if that's a trade-off I'm willing to make, then okay. And then I usually do. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a real thing. And I think it's really hard for people who've never experienced that to understand, is, because I've had these conversations with people that they don't experience that. And they can't quite wrap their brain around it. But, especially.
How did you even hear about semaglutide in 2021? I don't even think I heard about it until like 2023. And even then it was just a diabetes medicine.
Yeah. So it was, Dr. Mike Israel and Dr. Crystal. Okay. They were the ones that kind of started to bring it to my attention. And I think it was late 2021. It might have even been 2022 at this point. I don't quite remember, when I was like, you know what, maybe this is something that could help, because I started hearing these stories on the same line of people who have dealt with this, like, just insane food drive where it feels like it's consuming their life. Using it and like having this realization of like, oh, is this what like it feels like to just go out to eat and eat a meal and like then leave and go on about the rest of your life?
Right.
And it was like, this is brand new to me. And so I started hearing about these things, and that's what brought me to try it.
And are you still taking it? Is that
Yeah.
still, yeah.
Yeah, I do still take it. I take a very low dose. And this is something I talk about a lot. And it's kind of a bit of a passion project for me because, in the fitness industry, things like this can be very decisive.
Yeah.
And there's two sides of it, but one side of it is there's a lot of people that they feel it's cheating or that it's a crutch. And, I try to explain to people like, hey, for some people, these literally can be life changing.
Yeah. I mean,
And it,
like,
it lets them take control.
well, okay. It's for me and my thoughts on it. Like, if I'm being totally honest, I'm like, there are people out there that are like ravenously anti Advil. Like, they don't like
Yeah.
Advil. I've never once thought of somebody who even if you had like a hard gym session and your legs are blown out and you're like, I had to take an Advil to reduce inflammation. I'm
Right.
not sitting there going like, that guy cheated.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't enter my thought process. I do know what you're saying. Like, I understand. It's the same thing with weight loss surgery. It's the same kind of knee-jerk reaction to, and unfortunately, like, weight loss surgery has surprisingly low adherence. Like,
Yeah.
the majority of people that do that, fucking people are desperate.
Right.
And I do think it's hard for, the super bootstrap guys, the super like
hmm
just fucking, tell your inner bitch to shut up, to understand what biologically might be occurring differently in our bodies
Yeah.
to their bodies, because just tell your inner bitch to shut up. I've done that, and my inner bitch doesn't shut up all the time.
Yeah.
And I am also a guy who believes that we are in control of our thoughts. Like, so
Yeah.
I hold these two ideas in my head simultaneously, where it's like, no, I believe that I can think a different thought, but that other thought that I'm trying to avoid by thinking the new thought, it's fucking coming back
Yeah.
over and over again,
Yeah.
And so, like, I don't judge people who have had weight loss surgery at all, because it's like, I don't think there is a one size fits all approach to this.
hmm
And if you told me, if there was some data where it was like, everybody who did this diet found it to be a lot easier, and found that their food noise was reduced, I wouldn't sit here going, well, that diet's cheating.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it is a weird kind of thing to do. I have a daughter with type 1 diabetes. She takes insulin. Is she cheating at life?
Yeah. It's these, there's this weird standard that kind of gets mixed. And I think with weight loss in particular, it's a really kind of divisive and emotional subject for a lot of people.
Yeah. I will say, I have to say the flip side, because I hold many ideas that are in conflict often with each other.
hmm
And that is the way I often dieted before I found a structure and pattern that was sustainable was, I got to get this weight off as quickly as possible
Oh,
and then
yeah.
be done. And then I'm done and I'm not thinking about it anymore. I'm no longer doing that diet. And I have seen with a few people now, this thing of like doing a 3-month cycle of,
Yeah.
and that I think is a really bad idea. And
Yeah, I think
that-
that's a kind of a slippery slope and a dangerous thing, and I think it falls into like any other fad diet, because I've been there with fad diets before.
yeah,
I've done all kinds of I don't know if you know what the master cleanse is.
sure.
I remember doing
Fuck
that.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so it's I don't think those things are going to go away either.
No, I don't either.
And I think that's the importance of like trying to educate people of how all of these things can intersect.
Yeah, I think there will be a subset of people who hop on one of these GLP-1 agonists and then do the master cleanse. And they think of
Right.
it as just like a way to make the master cleanse a little bit less painful or a little
Yeah.
bit more tolerable. And that, to me, is scary. Like,
Hmm.
if enough people do that, we get really bad results. And then that outweighs the good results to some
Yeah.
degree. You know what I mean? Those get advertised. You hear all these like, there's just so many people who are out there talking about the side effects, like the whole like lean tissue loss. I fucking had lean tissue loss at the same rate when I was doing keto. Like I would go
Right.
and get DEXA scans and I was losing 40% muscle mass and like
Yeah.
pulling my hair out of my head. Not that I even have much to pull out, but like what the fuck do I do? I'm eating
Right.
steaks and the smallest amount of broccoli, and my ketones are bright fucking purple every day that I piss on the stick. Like, what do I do here?
Yeah.
I'm withering away. I feel weak. Anytime you lose weight quickly
Hmm.
and you don't do resistance training and prioritize protein, you're gonna have lean tissue wasting. Like
Yeah.
there's no avoiding that.
Yeah. I think this is an important topic that I like to talk about a lot is the this people talk about like, oh, these drugs, they cause muscle loss. Well, no, these drugs don't cause muscle loss. Extreme dieting, not resistance training, not eating enough protein, that causes muscle loss when you're in a calorie deficit. These drugs don't necessarily cause it. They just make you eat less,
Yeah.
and that doesn't mean, it's like, and it happens, it happened. Doctors even do it too. Like some doctors are, maybe not the greatest at this, where they just like put somebody on the highest dose of these drugs possible. And these people just don't eat, and they were given no education about how to do things. And they end up losing a lot of muscle.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and the subset of people who are getting them at like some clinic that's offering them at 3-month intervals, those people are probably going to wind up losing
Yeah.
lean tissue, regaining the fat, jumping on them again. And then
Yeah.
over time, it's going to not be great for them. We'll have
Right.
increase in osteoporosis and other things. And that's not good. And then like, you're basically like, not incentivized to even have these conversations unless you choose a side so fervently that is like, these drugs are only lifesavers and you can't say anything bad about them, or these drugs are only
Right.
cheating and who, we shouldn't be taking drugs. And it's like almost this like Christian Scientist point of view.
Right.
And it's like, guys, we've got to be able to communicate about this. We just have to, because like the drugs aren't going anywhere, first of
Right.
all.
Right.
So like if we want to make the best of the drugs, the conversation is looking at guys like you who are prioritizing protein and doing resistance training. And there you go. You've just mitigated all the bad side effects.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, this is like a topic that comes up a lot. This is gonna, I think, really reshape the landscape of dieting.
Oh, I definitely, I 100% think it's going to. And that's why I want to be, I've always tried to be so transparent about it and just try to educate people on the kind of realities from these drugs and how to use them in conjunction.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when guys like Joe Rogan are talking about recovering with the peptide BPC 157, is that cheating? He's not a professional athlete. I don't know that it's banned or not. I don't know really much about it, but like, is he a cheater? I just don't understand the knee-jerk reaction to, a crutch. Who doesn't need a fucking crutch if you have like a broken ankle?
Right. Yeah. And to me, it's like, it's one of those things, hey, modern medicine exists for a reason. These things exist for a reason. Like, you don't have to use them, but they're available if you want to.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you primarily eat now? And let me ask you this, because this has been my kind of haunting thought about these drugs, which was the way I used food for the most part was I was hungry, but I think I wasn't physiologically hungry. I was hungry because food comforted me. I think I was in search more of like a dopamine bolus. And I sought that through types of foods as much as quantities of food.
Right. Yeah.
And so moving away from those types. Like I don't really go to fast food. Not that I haven't in the last 6, 7 years. I have, but it's very, very rare.
Yeah, same.
And there's like a lot of thought that goes into it for me. And so my thought has been like, well, if I jumped on that, would all of these other principles that I've kind of got that have been working for me for a while, do they fall away?
Yeah,
Do you get more reasonable with food?
You definitely get more reasonable, but at the same time, like I don't really eat any different now than I did before.
Right.
And a lot of that's, habits, because at this point it's been so many years. I think the big thing that I notice is, like, for instance, I actually had pizza Saturday, this last weekend. But it was like, I ate it, and as I was eating it, I still had pizza left. And I was like, you know what? I'm kind of full. And so I stopped eating.
Right.
And I put it aside, and there was pizza in the fridge, but I didn't think about it.
Right.
The noise of like that constant thought of, oh my God, there's pizza in the fridge right now. I could go eat pizza right now. Should I? Right. That wasn't like, there.
Haunts me. The idea that there's any left haunts me. Like watching my wife drink wine, and if she doesn't finish her glass of wine, I can't stop thinking about her glass of wine, because like I, as an alcoholic, just want to drink the bottle and then open the case and see how much of a dent I can put in that before I'm blackout drunk and not control myself anymore. And it's a very similar thing with food. Like if one of my kids, I have my youngest daughter will like, she just has so much in our refrigerator of like unfinished food.
Yeah.
And then she's like, well, maybe I'm going to eat it later. And like 3 days will go by and I'm like, can I finally throw this away? Like, I can't stop thinking about this like quarter of a cookie you have sitting in our refrigerator. And I didn't eat any of it. I'm not going to eat any of it, but it's driving me crazy that you just can't finish it.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to tell my wife all the time, like, I didn't like going out to eat with her, because we'd go out to eat and she would eat some of her food and then stop and just be like full. And in my head, I'm doing two things. I'm going, why are you talking? There's food in front of you. You should be eating that food.
Yeah.
And then when she's done, I'm like, there's food. What are you doing? There's food there. You should eat it. If you're not going to eat it, give it to me. I'll eat it.
Yeah. It's a glitch.
Yeah.
In my thought process, I am the same way. It drives me crazy.
Yeah.
And so that has settled down.
Has settled down significantly. I'd be lying if I said I don't sometimes still have it, especially if I have dieted and, pushed it for, a couple months to get a little leaner. But the level of it is so much less.
Yeah.
Like I can go out to eat with my wife, and we can have a date night, and I can sit and talk with her and not just be so focused on food. I don't really notice anything else going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Yesterday, I'm in New York. It was one of the nicest days in a while. It's still pretty chilly, but we went to the park, and we were in the park, and it was this beautiful day. And then my son-in-law went and got these sandwiches from a new sandwich place that is just somehow, my Instagram feed is bodybuilders and food. Oddly, that's all I get. And this new sandwich place is like on an endless, like I could open my Instagram feed at any time of the day and I'm going to see this sandwich spot. I don't even follow them. But they know, they're tracking my eyes, and they can tell I'm lingering on those sandwiches. So he brings back these sandwiches, and I'm like, with my kids, with my grandkids, with my son-in-law, with my wife. It's a beautiful day in the park. He brought back these sandwiches. I want to share in this experience with them. And so I ate a quarter. They cut the sandwiches into quarters. I ate a quarter of one of these sandwiches. And I got to be totally honest with you. Like, it didn't blow me away. It was not the greatest sandwich ever. But for probably 4 hours, I experienced simultaneous regret and a desire to go buy another sandwich. It was and I was walking around like, I'm in the park. I'm with my family. The sun is out. It's not freezing cold. why am I thinking about this fucking sandwich?
Mm-hmm.
And like, it didn't mess up my day. I'm not going to gain weight because of what I've eaten. I didn't wind up getting more, like, but I thought about it a little
Yeah.
bit more than I should have.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably, I think it was the first Thanksgiving after I started taking the medication that I really kind of noticed it, because I remember previous years, I basically Thanksgiving was, and I made the, I would always make jokes of everything, kind of self-deprecating humor is the idea of like, the meal's not over when you're full, the meal's over when you hate yourself.
Yes.
And I would literally eat until I would throw up most years. And literally the entire rest of the day, all I thought about was eating more food.
Yeah.
And generally the, next week, if we had leftovers, that's all I could think about. And the first year on the medication, I remember we had Thanksgiving dinner and I was in the middle of eating a plate of food and I just stopped for a moment. I was like, I'm really full. I don't want any more.
Wow.
And then I put the food back and I spent time with family. Whereas before I was literally like, I would sit there at the dinner table and I would watch and be like, okay, has everyone finished a plate? Has everyone got seconds? Okay, I'm going to go now, because I don't want to be that guy. Like, I'm very mindful of the fact that like all I want to do is eat and all I want to do is keep eating. But there's all these other people around and like, you feel weird and like, oh, what are they going to think about me if I go back and get more food and someone else didn't? So I'm, have all these thoughts going in my head the whole time. And it never really allowed me to experience just the time hanging out with family because my mind was so preoccupied by food and that was it.
Yeah. Whew. Well, I'm very happy for you, brother.
I appreciate it, man. It's definitely been what I would call it a life-changing experience to be able to kind of have some freedom around food and feel like it's not controlling.
Yeah, totally. Okay, let's go back. I jumped ahead to how lean you are. um, you're doing the don't eat like an asshole, and then you have buy-in, you have momentum. Your buddy shows you the before and after pictures. You're like, oh, this I have done something.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you pivot to from there?
So that's when I really was like, okay, if I really like get serious with diet, like, oh, what can I do? Like, and of course I'm a 19-year-old 20 guy. I'm like, I can get abs. I've never had abs in my life before.
Right.
Oh, okay. And so I'm like, I went, real hardcore, low carb. And I went from like, okay, we would maybe do a couple home workouts a week. I had started doing some martial arts stuff with him. I was like, well, if I can do some, more is better. So I started running. And I mean, I got to the point where I was probably running, between 10 and 20 miles a day.
Jesus.
I would literally like go out running at like 9 p.m. at night and run until 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
Because that was like what my schedule allowed me to do at the time. And it's just like, I took it from, one extreme to the other. My brain tends to work like that where like everything has to be in an extreme.
Yeah.
So I'm like, really low carb, really low food intake, and just grinding myself into the dirt with just running and lifting and like, doing high intensity cardio and all this stuff like that. Cause like, I would, in my mind, it was like, this is what it takes to have abs.
Right.
This is what's required. And if I want to have abs, this is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to do it.
Jesus, running like that while on low carb, what did that feel like?
Ass.
Yeah, I can't imagine that felt good.
It was, I mean, I was like, everything hurt all the time. I had zero actual energy. Kind of that walking around in a brain fog at all times where you don't really know what's going on. That's basically how I felt all the time.
Yeah.
And I just assumed, okay, this is part of the process. It's what it takes. If I want to lose weight, if I want to get abs, this is what I have to do. So
I wasn't even in search of abs. I was just trying to get as thin as possible. And in like 2010, I was riding a bike, probably about averaged 6 to 8 hours a day, five or 6 days a week. And and I was doing low carb, and would get, we'd go on these rides with other cyclists who were all just like peak performance athletes.
Yeah. They got the
And
gels and everything.
everything, and we would get to, like, we'd have breakfast at some points along the ride, and they'd all order, wheat toast with no butter and some egg whites, and I would always order like sausage and tell the waitress give me their egg yolks,
Yeah.
add them to my omelet. And at one point, one of the guys was like, you might be struggling up the hills because you have no carbohydrates. And I was like, that's crazy. I'm allergic to carbohydrates, this and that.
Right.
And then I finally did go, like, I think it was for an actual race where one of the guys was like, you're going to feel better, have a couple gels before the race. And it was like a miracle.
Right.
The difference I felt. I still believed for quite a few years that I was allergic to carbohydrates.
Yeah.
But I noticed it. So then I just started going like, okay, well, I'm only going to eat like next to nothing and have gels while I ride and stuff. And my ability to perform cardio like exploded from that point on. Those things are, a little bit of carbohydrates when you're exercising can be miraculous.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I did that for a while. And I remember when I crashed and burned, it was again around the holidays, funny enough, but I was just so tired all the time. I always hungry, and it was cold, and I just was like, I can't make myself get out and run today.
Yeah.
And I didn't. And then I remembered I went out to eat with my parents. We had like it was, for Christmas or whatever, we went to a steakhouse, and I had a sweet potato. And then I had their sweet potatoes. And it was just like, it kind of that started the spiral where I think I was just so drug myself into the ground that I couldn't make myself do it all anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Where'd you go after that?
So a few months goes by, I gained a good amount of weight, and I ended up having another friend that kind of talked me into getting more into lifting. Because at the time I had, maybe 2 or 3 days a week, I would go into a gym and just push some machines around. Didn't really know what I was doing. So I started doing a little bit more lifting, and he convinced me to do powerlifting. And at the time I was still just completely bought in, low carb. Like you said, you're allergic to carbs. If I eat a carb, I'm gaining 10 pounds overnight.
Right.
So I started training for powerlifting, and through that process, I kind of really fell in love with lifting. And again, goes back to, extremes where my brain goes. So I just dove in. I started reading everything I could. It's like watching YouTube all the time and all my free time, just trying to absorb content. And it's funny. I remember I was on Juggernaut Strength Training's website, and there was an article by Dr. Mike about performance and stuff. And I was reading it, and I saw like, oh, they have this diet book. Okay, well, I'm going to get it and read it. And I remember reading it, and at the time, the book talked about having like 100-gram carb intra-workout shakes.
Yeah.
And I remember reading it, and I was like, what the hell are these assholes thinking?
Right.
They are batshit crazy. If I did this, I would be back to 350 pounds in a heartbeat. But damn it, I paid for the book. I guess I should try. And so I tried. I set up a diet following that book, and I went from eating like super low carb, barely any carbs. I think on average I was like 30 grams or less a day.
Yeah, that's what I aim for too. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I went from that to like 400 grams of carbs overnight. And like you mentioned,
did the jump on the scale scare you?
Oh, dude, it terrified the shit out of me.
Yeah, dude.
I was like, oh my God.
You're like, these motherfuckers. I gained 10 pounds in 2 days. Yeah.
I was like, I knew it. These assholes are crazy. But I'm like, at the same time, I'm sitting here like, but I paid for the damn book. Damn, I got to try. And so I just kept going, and I ended up like having a super successful diet, and lost, I think, 15 pounds. And at that time, that put me back under 200. I was like 190, and that was, I hadn't been under 200 in a few years at that point.
Let me ask you a question about that. Did you notice with that 15-pound weight loss, could you tell a difference in the weight you were losing?
Oh yeah.
Because that was one of the things that kept me doing that version of dieting was when I was dialed in that way and I was losing weight, suddenly I was revealing muscle in a different way than I had been. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly that. It's like I could look in the mirror and I'm like, there's a line here.
Yeah.
And that was very motivating for me. It's one of those things, just I never saw that in myself before, and it was cool. And so I was like really bought in. So I did that. And then I did a maintenance on it, which was really weird.
Yeah.
Because at that time in my life, it was either dieting or not dieting.
Right.
And not dieting meant gaining weight.
Yeah.
So I did maintenance and I did pretty good on it. And then their original diet templates came out, RP's original diet templates. And so I picked up the diet template and I used it to prep for a powerlifting meet, actually. And I got down to 172 pounds is what I weighed in at the powerlifting meet.
Wow.
And for the first time in my life, I had abs.
Yeah.
And so to me,
for
that
a
was
powerlifting meet, which is crazy because when I think of powerlifters, I think they all tend to be fat.
Yeah, like old school equipped geared powerlifting guys. Yeah. So for me, I mean, it was the first time in my life I had ever been lean and had abs, and like I looked at myself, and I think for the first time probably ever, I was like actually happy about how I looked.
Yeah.
And that was a new experience to me. It was a new feeling.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where I, ended up from that. And after that powerlifting meet, I decided to like actively try to gain muscle, which included actively gaining weight for the first time in my life.
Yeah.
And that was terrifying.
Yeah. I did one kind of cycle with Jared as my coach. And then I just had to say, like, dude, I cannot do this. I think I got back up to like 290. And this was just from maintenance, just increasing my meals ever so slightly.
Right.
And like every bit of it stayed on. And I couldn't, and I also, the last DEXA scan I had 223 pounds of lean tissue. Like I don't actually
you're a jacked guy.
I'm big. And so I started to go like, where do I want to get 230? Like, what does that do anything for me? And so I kind of was like, I couldn't do it, but I want to hear about your experience with that after so many years where weight loss came unintentionally and all the effort was put into, weight gain came, I don't know how I said this, weight gain came unintentionally and all effort was put into weight loss.
Yeah.
What psychologically was happening when you were intentionally gaining weight?
Oh man, there was many tears.
Yeah.
I remember crying to my girlfriend at the time, wife now, about it. Like every pound that went on that scale was just like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah.
I've spent like basically my, every effort I've ever put into weight at all before has been to lose weight. And now I'm actually purposely gaining weight. And I honestly hated every bit of it.
Yeah.
I finished the bulk phase and I did another cut. And this is where I kind of got buy-in to the idea of like actually cycling, like cutting and bulking phases. Because when I did another cut, it was like so psychologically refreshing to like see that number go back down. It was like, oh, a weight's been lifted off of me because like I don't have to keep watching this and having anxiety every time I step on the scale.
Yeah.
Because it's going the way I've programmed myself to want it to go.
Right.
But I cut down and I think I gained 15 pounds and I cut down 10 pounds. And I was like noticeably different.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh,
I think that's such a big deal too. What you're talking about, because I had a very similar experience where weight loss, and look, going from 500 pounds to 400 pounds, I couldn't see it at all. But
Hmm.
my girlfriend at the time could see it, and I had people rooting me along, and they could see it. And so I had the desperation to go further. But when I was down like towards the end, I would say from 350 to 250, and I did a lot of that was a struggle with keto where I would drop down
Hmm.
to 280 and then gain back up to 370. And that was kind of like this 100 pounds that I could put a big dent in and then it would come back. I remember there being really no difference, no discernible difference to my eye when I would lose weight
Hmm.
versus when I started prioritizing protein and not fat and allowing myself carbohydrates and losing weight a little bit slower.
Right.
It was like almost daily that I would be like, that's what I look like. Wow.
Right.
I could have that in a different way that gave me buy-in to that system.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, I think that was, I mean, ultimately, I think that kind of is what kept me being able to buy in is those visual changes that you see.
Yeah.
Cause I think if you've ever been overweight in your life before, anytime you purposefully gain weight is actually like one of the hardest things to do.
It's insane. Yeah.
Because it's so against like everything that your brain tells you to do.
Well, maintenance is hard. That amount
Maintenance
of
is
effort
brutal.
just to maintain your weight is hard.
Yeah.
Then to like go one step further. And, you know, I think there's probably a version of like a guy who's like, I'm going to use this dirty bulk just as an excuse to not think about anything.
Hmm.
But I don't think that's what you're talking about. You're talking about very calculated
Yeah.
weight gain, right? But very
Yeah.
intentional and efforted. And yeah, if you've been into some zone where you've had success with weight loss and you're like starting to feel some satisfaction with it, to then go the opposite direction is really tough.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely was it was a mind fuck. And even now it honestly still is,
Yeah.
years later, even now it is. I think because I have past experiences I can lean on, I can, take that voice in my head that's like, what the fuck are you doing?
Right.
And be like, oh, there's a purpose to this. There's a plan to this. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's kind of the voice I use to eat pizza once a year. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's the same voice. It's the voice of rationale where it is really that's where I go. Like, I do believe to some degree we're in control of our thoughts.
Hmm.
And we can have that conversation. You know,
Yeah.
when I'm feeling really strung out on maintenance and like down about the number being the same, even though every effort I've put into my life has been to keep the number the same, I have to have a conversation with myself.
Yeah.
Like, dude, what are you doing?
Right. Yeah. It's that reaction to our thoughts
Yeah.
is like understanding that it's not always easy, but
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how you've been living for years.
yeah, that's how I've been living for years, So if we kind of take a bird's eye view of everything, like my heaviest was like 350, which was the top of the scale that I had at the time. And I figure it was probably around there to my lightest of 175, we'll call it. Now currently I'm walking around about 210 to 215. I would, fairly lean. I have abs. Um,
I swear to God, I hope everybody goes and looks at your page and you can scroll back through the years. You're a lean dude.
yeah. Yeah, and so like this, and recently I kind of stepped back from like any chase of like physique goals, like because like I'm never going to be like a super successful bodybuilder. I know that about myself, but it's just something I do for fun. Recently, I stepped back from that, and I've actually been focused like significantly on maintenance for the first time actually ever, because I've always had some kind of weight goal I've chased
Right.
and put priorities into other things. I do jujitsu, so I've been prioritizing that for the last 7 or 8 months. But like that's kind of where I walk around at now with
And
my
you're
weight and
and you're
everything.
really lean at
Yeah,
200 plus pound. How tall are you?
6'2".
Amazing. That's amazing. And how are you finding that long-term maintenance?
Um, like that. I still have those thoughts fairly frequently of like, the scale's not moving. Like, what do
Yeah.
I need to change?
Yeah.
And it's like taking a step back and being like, this is your goal. You're succeeding in your goal.
Right.
You don't need to change anything.
Is there a little nagging voice where like, cause again, I look at you and I think he's like, if I could be as lean as him and hang out there and maintenance wasn't a battle, that's what I would do. But for me, I think it is a little bit uh, higher body fat percentage than you. And that's fine. And I'm totally
Yeah.
fine with that because I have been cruising for a while and like my life is in a place where I'm fairly content. But I then say that and there will be the voice of like, what if I took 10 pounds off? What would
Oh,
that be? Could it's been hard in the past, but now it could be different.
yeah, bro. Like last week, I had that thought.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, literally, like a few days ago, I was like, I could just try to cut and see about how lean I could get. I could probably get really lean if I really wanted to.
Yeah.
But it's just like then it's like, okay, I could, yes,
Right.
but at what cost? Because it's like now I also understand that like to get leaner than I am now, where I can maintain fairly comfortably, my priorities in life have to shift.
Yeah. It's
And
kind of like yeah, I think it has to be a bigger motivation than cuz I could.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like if somebody said, "I want to take a picture of you in 3 months," then I start to go like, "Okay, well, am I willing to reconstruct my life for the next 3 months
right.
for that?" Or, for me for work, there's some things where it's like I want to be extra lean for that job
Hmm.
and that I can rationalize. But when I'm like cruising I am able to spend time with my family and it's not all consuming and I'm not mad that I didn't do 2 hours in the gym. I only did one. It's
Yeah,
hard to go like because I can is the reason that I'm doing it.
right. Yeah, it's like that rational part of your brain is like, this is not enough,
Right.
but
Yeah.
doesn't mean that part of your brain that's telling you, but you could, isn't there.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, Trevor, this has been such a great conversation. I really appreciate you. You are motivation for me every time I see you. Thank you.
Man, I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure. It was so good to talk to you. It was so much fun.
You too. Talk soon.